Good morning, everyone. Today is Inauguration Day. Most of the scheduled programming just ended at 10, so if you need a break from kind of the current events topics and want to switch gear a little bit, great. I'm glad you can join us here. This is the Middle East Studies Center's live stream and podcast. Will be podcast. So we live stream on Facebook, and actually today we're also live streaming on Periscope on my account, and then we will upload it to our podcast. And we're covering all kinds of topics that'll help you understand the Middle East and the diversity and the cultures there, but then also the background information you need to understand the headlines. So today we're going to be with Dr. Alam Payind. He's the director of the Middle East Studies Center here at Ohio State University. And he's going to go into minority religious groups in the Middle East. And he's also going to give kind of an overview of what makes the Middle East unique and kind of the context for why you have these major world religions coming out of the Middle East, how they're interrelated, and then also the lesser known religions of the Middle East. So we'll be highlighting, different countries. We'll go into Shiism versus Sunni Islam, and a whole number of topics related to minority religions in the Middle East. Dr. Payind should be joining us any minute now, so I'm just kind of on standby. But if you have, let me just pull up my comments box to see if you have anything you want to share, anything you'd want us to address specifically. You can post a comment on Facebook, maybe on Periscope as well. Oh, here's Dr. Payind. So now that I've got those housekeeping things out of the way. And I should also mention, I'm the assistant director of the Middle East Studies Center. I'm Melinda McClymans, and Dr. Payind, as I mentioned, he's the director of the Middle East Studies Center. So we work together, we're really pleased to be here with you for an hour today. If you want to learn more about us, we'll post our website. You can learn all about Dr. Payind and I. You can also, see what's coming up if you follow us on social media, if there's any events of interest to you, what projects we're working on, etc. So, without any further ado, welcome, Dr. Payind.
Thank you very much, Melinda, and I am really grateful to the people who probably will be listening to this podcast, and so it's a really unique opportunity for most of us to share or exchange sort of information on the Middle East from the religious minority groups to other ethnic groups and linguistic groups and religious groups in the Middle East. So we think that this is part of the Middle East Studies Center of the Ohio State University's job, that we have to disseminate information on the Middle East about its history, its people, its languages, religions, civilizations of the Middle East, and also the current developments, political and economic developments in the Middle East.
Absolutely. So do you want me to pull up any like media, like maps or charts, or
I think it's useful because with the region that we call the Middle East, there are several regions like East Asia, Latin America, Central Asia, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. So Middle East is unique in many ways. One of the ways that the Middle East is unique, it's in the map. We can see that it's a region that which connects three continents with each other: Asia, Africa, and Europe. When you look at this definition of the Middle East by the State Department and by the Pentagon and by mass media, so this, the heart of the Middle East is Egypt, which is in North Africa, then the whole Arabian Peninsula, which you see Yemen, Oman, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain. Then you go to Israel and Lebanon and Syria and Jordan, Turkey, Iran, Iraq. These are all, this is what they call it, the heart of the Middle East. And when I say that it's unique, when you look at that, it's located on the crossroads of civilizations. Three major civilizations originated in the Middle East: the Egyptian civilization, the Persian civilization, and the Sumerian civilization. And on top of that, when you look at the Middle East, which another uniqueness of the Middle East as a region is that it's located on the confluence of the trade routes, whether it's the Silk Road or the Spice Road. They all used to pass through the Middle East. And when you look at that, the development of the civilizations, and very obvious one is that the three major religions of the world originated in the Middle East, namely Judaism, which is the oldest of the monotheistic religions, then the Christianity, which today the largest number of people in the world are Christians. It's about probably 2.2 billion Christians. The second largest religious group in the world are Muslims. So probably about 1.3, 1.4, even some people say that 1.5 billion. Judaism did not grow that widely as the Christianity, but also Judaism, which people trace back to the birth of Abraham and the teachings of Abraham in articulating monotheism by Abraham. So that's which gave birth to Judaism in the region. There is another region that we do not talk much about that. It's also a Middle Eastern religion, which is Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster was born in today's Balkh, which is in Afghanistan, or it was part of the Persian Empire at one point. Then that religion became the official language, official religion of the Persian Empire, the late period of the Achaemenid Empire and the Sasanian Empire. Then also later Christianity and Islam in 622 AD, Muslims have originated in today's Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. And from there, Islam spread not only to North Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, all the way down to Spain. And then Islam spread to today's Turkey and Iran and Afghanistan and Central Asian countries of Tajikistan, which is the modern day Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, even up to the China, for example. One of the provinces of China is a majority Muslim area, which is Xinjiang. So that was the period of Islam. Also, heart of this empire was in the Middle East, the Egyptian civilization, the Sumerians. And then, again, another uniqueness of the Middle East is that because of these three civilizations in the Middle East, outsiders got interested in the Middle East. Persians were the first who came and captured huge territories of the Middle East. And after the Persians came the Greeks, not the Greeks, the Macedonians. If you talk to the Afghans and Iranians, they do not call Alexander the Great as a Greek. They said Macedonian. Even in Arabic, it's a secondary Maqduni, which is the Macedonian Alexander. Then after the Greeks came the Romans. After the Romans came the Byzantine, was in control of the Middle East. And then Islam came, and Islam captured, Muslims captured those areas. Then in the 17th century, the Ottoman Turks captured 16th century. I think it was 1516 AD that the Ottoman Empire took control of most of these areas up to Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. So huge empire. The Ottoman Empire was defeated by the British and the French and Americans and Russians in World War I. And then came the British and the French to the Middle East. Well, the Middle East, there was one another. Napoleon also came and invaded Egypt and went up to Palestine. Yeah. So these were the big, huge empire builders.
That was in like 1798 or something like that?
Yes, 1790, yes. That's what, well, of all the conquerors, two of them, one was Alexander the Great and another one was this Napoleon. That both of them took some sort of scholars with them.
Yeah.
Their conquest of other regions. And if it would not be for the Napoleon and the French invasion of the Egypt, probably we would have not known deciphering of the hieroglyphics and the Rosetta Stone and others. So that's what Napoleon really, in some ways, contributed to the knowledge of the Middle East more than any other empire builder in the region. So these are all important things that which we said that the uniqueness of the Middle East. Now what happened? All these invaders and languages and migration of the people, the conquest, even Genghis Khan, for example, rose from Mongolia. That's another one that which most of our kids do not know. It rose from Mongolia and captured the whole of the Central Asia and Afghanistan and Iran and parts of Russia and came and captured the Middle East.
Yeah.
Baghdad was sacked by the Genghis Khan, the descendants of the Genghis Khan, Hulagu. So even Genghis came to the Middle East. And that was the medieval ages that we are talking about.
Yeah.
So, and even in the modern area, Americans are in the Middle East right now.
Yes.
American troops are in Iraq, American troops are in Afghanistan, American troops used to be in Somalia, they are getting out, in Syria. So the French and the British, they carved the Middle East after World War I. All of them have left these outsiders and the regional people, their religions, their cultures, their languages, their religions. So in some ways, Middle East is one of the most diverse region of the world in terms of its religions, cultures, languages. Not only the religions, Judaism and Christianity and Islam, then there are subgroups of each one of them. Like among the Christians, it's Orthodox Christians, Roman Catholics and Protestants denominations. Among the Muslims, that's the Shia Sunni main branches. Then each one of these Shia and Sunni branches have their own subgroups, like 4 Sunni schools and 3 major Shia schools. These are the sects within each one of these religions. Even when you come to the Jews of the Middle East, in numbers are smaller.
They're diverse.
You have this ultra-Orthodox Jews, and then you have conservative Jews, you have Reform Jews, and then you have Ashkenazi Jews, you have Sephardic Jews.
And then you have local Jews that never
Mizrahi Jews, which never moved from the Middle East. They were not expelled. They stayed there in the region. Didn't move to other places like the Sephardic or the Ashkenazi Jews. Coming to the country where I grew up, in Afghanistan, before the state of Israel in 1948, there was a very prominent community of Jews in Afghanistan. Iran still has a good community. Turkey, and many of them moved to Israel after Israel became a country in 1948. These prominent communities were there. Iraq, for example, had a very large community of the Jews. Egypt had a very large community of the Jews in their synagogues in those countries. In Iraq, in many of these Muslim countries, those synagogues and churches survived until this date.
Some
of them were taken, some of them
are still active too.
Some of them were very active,
Of course, the number is small, but they're still, they're still there, right? Like in Iran and Turkey, and maybe not as much in Afghanistan. I think, isn't there only one person left who's
one person that was taking care of the synagogue in Kabul. But when I was in Afghanistan or went to the university, There was a very nice community of the Jews in Kabul. Um, their kids, we used to play soccer with each other. Then many of them have later, especially when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, these Jews in Afghanistan, it's really, it's a mystery for many people that some people are theorizing that one of the lost tribes of the Israelites, that's probably they went to Afghanistan, and then there were theories about that these Pashtuns are somehow.
Yeah,
they-
yeah. There's
remember
always
that?
there's a mystique around the lost tribes of Israel because
Yes, there is a mountain in southern Afghanistan by the name of Kohi Suleiman, means that the Suleiman's
oh,
mountain. Yeah, it's until this date. This is named the Kohi Suleiman, means the
okay.
mountain of Solomon. Yes. So they said that, well, these were those lost tribes.
Yeah.
There were some British historians were pushing this theory.
Oh, is that who
Yeah.
published it? Okay.
It is still discussed among many. And
Yes.
then other group of the Jews, there were some that who said that we were here from the ancient period. And there were another group of Jews that who came to Afghanistan. It was after the collectivization of the Soviet Union during Stalin's period. They came from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. They came to Iran and Afghanistan, and they settled in Afghanistan.
Oh,
Then
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
were
yeah, they came. There were some that we used to go to their home when I was growing up in Kabul, and they were telling us that, well, our ancestors came from after the collectivization, because many of them were in businesses in those areas.
And maybe some of our audience don't remember the Soviet Union, and how religion was actually outlawed. So some people just left, right?
Yeah, most of those that who were devout Jews and practicing Muslims, practicing Christians,
Yeah.
their lives were threatened and religion was totally abolished. Their churches and synagogues and mosques were taken, especially during the Stalin's period. And
Yeah.
many of them left. They have left and they went to other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Most of the Russian Jews started to go to Turkey. And
That's
this is
usually
after
what I think of.
1917,
Yeah.
after 1917.
They would go to Israel, but I guess there's no reason to think they have to go to Israel. They could just cross the border and, I mean, yeah, they probably went to lots of different places. That's really interesting.
Even in the Brezhnev period, they used to be called refuseniks.
Ah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, very large number of them left. Many of them went to Israel, and many of them went to Europe and other places. So they were leaving as recently as the Brezhnev era in the 1970s, 80s. So this large group of Jews migrated to other places in Israel, Sharansky and many others. They became prominent people in many ways. Some of them were artists, some of them were lawyers, some of them were engineers, doctors, and so very prominent people. They have left the Soviet Union in the 70s and 80s. So these waves and waves of when Holocaust is another one. When Holocaust was going under those countries under Nazi Germany, many of the Jews have left those areas which came under the Nazi Germany. They went to Turkey and other places, and then from there they found their ways to the United States and other places.
Yeah.
So this is not a new thing for the Jews being expelled. It was the Babylonians who did that, the Assyrians did that, the Romans, 70,
Well,
80.
and there were the pogroms as well.
Then came the Crusaders.
Yeah.
The Crusaders came and they went to Jerusalem and killed Jews and Muslims both. In the Rhine Valley, Jews were slaughtered by the Crusaders. Then another one, Inquisition in 1492 in Spain. When Spain was ruled by the Muslims and Jews were in a very prominent position in Spain under the control of the Muslims. After 1949, many of these Jews and Muslims were given three difficult choices: either to convert to Catholicism, or be killed, or just live. And many of those Sephardic
In
Jews.
1492, right?
Yeah, 1492. It's the same year that America was discovered. 1492. It's the same year.
Yeah.
This is really coincided, these two dates. So now these Jews have made minorities in many of those countries they went. In Europe, their status was not very good. When you look at the history, this political Zionism sprang in mostly in Europe. It was the Christians of those societies were very anti-Semite.
Yeah.
And the same anti-Semitism was not something that a disease that which was only in Europe. It was in parts of Asia and the Arab countries and many other countries too. So it was almost if in the 1910 and 12 you would have asked someone that if a genocide of the Jews will happen, probably some of them would have said that, well, France, because France was very anti-Semite.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, the Dreyfus case was in France, and it was when Theodor Herzl was.
Well, and even Napoleon. I think Napoleon basically asked the Jewish community in France, "Are you loyal to France or to your community first?" And kind of put them through a lot of testing and trials and things like that.
Even when you look at the Merchant of Venice, in some Shakespeare dramas and others, the portrayal of the Jews in a very bad way. Then came the time of the cartoons and others. Before even the Nazi Germany, there was this anti-Semitism was a kind of thing that which, especially there were this hardcore Christians blaming.
Yeah, there was definitely an issue there in terms of Christian culture.
Not accepting Jesus and then rejecting him and that sort of thing. And they had to do something with the crucifixion.
And somehow they put it out of their mind that Jesus himself was a Jew,
Yeah, and so even recently there were some films made about this in the United States, which created some sort of uproar. So this anti-Semitism against
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson. Yeah,
that was 20 years ago. It was the what was it? The Passion of the Christ, I think.
Yeah, it was really.
It was kind of
did not like it. So that was a time. Then came a time when the Shiites were persecuted by the majority of the Sunnis, even in the Muslim societies until this date. Then the Catholics and Protestants. When you look at the history of the United States, why the pilgrims came from Europe to Americas, that was the persecution of the Protestants by the Catholic establishment of the time.
Well, and the Church of England. Yeah. And then if you look also at the beginning of the 20th century, the Ku Klux Klan was really targeting Catholics when they first, like in the early parts of the 20th century, when they were kind of having a resurgence, and that's not really remembered anymore, but that was they were,
anti-Catholic, anti-Semite, anti-blacks, anti-Hispanic. So it was
anti-everything, not like them.
Indiscriminate. It was not a white and Protestant and that sort of thing. Well, my own story is unique too. I became a graduate student at Indiana University in 1969. From Bloomington, Indiana, there were two routes to go to Indianapolis, the capital of the state. One used to pass through Martinsville, Indiana. And at that time, I'm talking about the 1960s, the Martinsville, Indiana had a very large community of the Ku Klux Klan. So many of us students who were either looked like Semitic or Middle Eastern or whoever, for the first time I heard that one of the foreign student advisors told me that I was a graduate student, orientation, that, well, if you guys are driving, don't drive through Martinsville. I was amazed. This was the first time that I learned about Ku Klux Klan. Until this date, the Charlottesville incident which happened just a few years ago, that's a very anti-Semite group. The neo-Nazis and others. So again,
there's been a major uptick on not only mosque attacks, which are in the news, but synagogue attacks.
Synagogue,
general anti-Semitic attacks have really gone up. There's just been a lot more hate crimes. It's steadily been going up over the past 20 years.
Yeah, if you look at the Defamation League, and it's because they're listing those anti-Semitic on the synagogues, and Muslims are recording some of the mosques which were desecrated by this right-wing group. So it's a common thing which goes
And we
on.
shouldn't forget the Sikhs as well. They've also had their.
Remember that 13 of them were killed by one of the that's poor Sikhs. I mean, this is one of the monotheistic religions, Sikhism. Some people associate that with Hinduism. Again, you brought a good point here. So in this country, they call it Gurdwara and their temple. So someone went and there, I think, 2 or 3 people, I do not know, but 13 or 14 people were just killed. This
man shot.
Yeah.
He had like a machine gun and just mowed everyone down with it.
And this the synagogue, which just a year or 2 ago. So that's synagogues have been desecrated, and the graveyards of the Jews and the Muslims have been desecrated. So these recent things.
And that also brings me to, I think, an important point whenever you're talking about religions, because I think it's shocking to most of us when we hear about how much hate there is for other, like from one type of religion to another, and how there's been wars and extreme hate incidents of violence. And so there's kind of what do you call it? Like a cliche, I guess, that, well, religions always lead to violence, you know.
Well, in the name of religion, people have committed violence against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And no religion is immune. When you look at the book of Joshua, for example, that when the Hebrews went back to capture the land from the Canaanites and from the Philistines and others, they really massacred and said that God has dictated this to us, that we are doing God's job. The Muslims against the Hindus and Hindus against the Muslims. We should not forget that after 1947, when the British left the subcontinent of India, 2 countries were formed. Pakistan as a Muslim majority, and this Hindu-Muslim war, literally millions were slaughtered on both sides. Sikhs and Hindus were slaughtered by the Muslims, Muslims were slaughtered by the Hindus.
Yeah.
And also, we should not forget the 100 years, 30 years war in Europe. Catholics
I think people a lot of times are alluding to that war when they say religion's a bad thing because it always leads to violence, you know. That's really imprinted in the memory. Oh,
in the recent history, this whole
computer is
Protestants in the United Kingdom, for example, this Ireland, and it continued until this date. Then the Catholics against the Protestants against the Catholics, and it had again the Shia Sunni still continues. Iran is supporting the Shia Iraq, Shia-dominated group of Iraq. They're supporting them against the Sunni Muslims. The Shia Iran is supporting the Lebanese Hezbollah and others against the Sunnis.
Exactly.
This Shia-dominated government of the Ayatollahs are very active in Yemen, supporting the Yazidi Shiites. And again, they're supporting this Syria's Bashar al-Assad. Even though Bashar al-Assad is not of the same branch of the Shia branch as the 12 Wazir of the Iran, but still it's the Iran support for the Houthis of the Yemen, are the establishment in Syria and Iraq. Iraq is now, after 1400 years, when Americans went to Iraq in 2003, what Americans did, they just they empowered the Shiites in Iraq after the American invasion in 2000. Now, after 1400 years, the Shiites were the majority, ruled by the minority of the Sunnis. Now it is the Shia majority is ruling Iraq, and their mistreatment of the Sunnis now, just like the Sunnis were mistreating the Shiites as a minority. Now it is in Syria. So
a lot of it has to do with power dynamics. Like I think it's not simply that people just automatically hate those who are different from them, but when there's a power difference between the 2 groups, it ends up, you know, there being a struggle between them, and then Yeah, like a conflict, basically a conflict between them, like an intrinsic conflict between them because of the different level of power they have. Like if their group is currently in government, they have more protection than the other group. And so it creates a lot of problems, you know.
I think we should
And
probably for the audience and anyone that who would listen to this podcast, it's important that I also mentioned that there are about 57 Muslim majority countries in the world. 57.
yeah,
Muslim majority. The largest one is Indonesia, which is not in the Middle East. The second largest is Pakistan, which is also not in the Middle East, and Bangladesh. Then when we come to the Middle East, the heart of the Middle East, Iran has about almost 90 million Muslims. Turkey is about 80 million Muslims, and Egypt is almost close to 80 million. So these are the largest Muslim countries in the heart of the Middle East. Yemen, Iraq is also about what, probably 40 million or 35 million. So even in the heart of the Middle East, when you look at that, the Sunni Arabs have the majority. The Shiites there are only, of the 57 Muslim majority countries, only 4 of them have a Shia majority. Iran is one of the Shia majority country. Iraq
right.
is the second. Lebanon is the third one, and Bahrain in the Middle East is probably the fourth. So they have the Shia
And
majority.
Iraq is different from the others because even though it has a Shia majority, it's not like an overwhelming majority. It's only
It is not. It is the pluralistic. It's the pluralistic majority. They said.
Yeah, but there's still a large number of Sunnis
Yeah.
there as well. Yeah,
Because the Sunnis are divided into the Sunni Arabs, the Sunni Kurdish, and the Sunni Turkomans and others. So when you take it that, so the Shiites have the majority. Well,
and I think also Iraq's important.
They have more than 51.
America's been involved there for so long, and before America invaded, the U.S. specifically, there were more intermarriages between Shias and Sunnis because it was less problematic to be of a different religious group at that time. People were different. They had different, like basically your extended family is going to pretty much be mainly your religion in general, but it wasn't as big of a deal. Like you'd have neighbors from different religions and they would sometimes intermarry, not like all the time, but the prevalence of that went down steadily after the US invaded. So I think it has to do with, again, going back to, when you shake up the power dynamics, you create all these problems between the groups.
Coming back to that, Iraq, I think the statistics are that Shiites are about 60% of the majority. So they have the absolute majority. It's not pluralistic. In Syria, it's the other way around. Sunnis are the majority, but the rulers are Alawite Shiites. So anyhow, you got the outside factor.
Yeah.
The outside conquerors, let's take when the British captured the subcontinent of India. There was this large Hindu majority and ruled by the Muslims for literally centuries. From the 11th century AD, that India was under the control of the Ghaznavids, then the Ghurids, then later the Babur, and they came. The Mughals were ruling India until 1857, 1858. Then the British took over. So India was ruled literally for hundreds of years by the Muslim minority over the majority.
Right.
So then when the British left, that's one reason why this India and Pakistan was on each other's throat, or Bangladesh.
Yeah.
The outside factors have aggravated the Shia Sunni. The British what they do, when they were in control of the Egypt, the British, they would recruit the Coptic Christians as either in their positions in others, or so grouping who were the Christians. So the Christian empires that went to the Muslim countries, they more associated. The same situation is true in Syria. When Syria came under the control of the French Catholic had a very good relationship with the Lebanese Christians of the time, the Maronites.
Yeah.
When the French went there and they carved this Lebanon as a new country under the British control. So they favored the ones that who were Christian, outside factors. When a Muslim emperor went to another country which was Sunni majority Shia, they would support the minority of the Sunnis if a Sunni conqueror went to that. So these outside invaders have aggravated the situation further. It's what they call it. I mean, it's simplistic to say that divide and conquer. The British Isles was almost, Canada was their colony, 13 American colonies in Australia, in India, in Pakistan, Malaysia, and others. They could not rule those countries by the British soldiers. So what they did, they recruited the domestic people in those areas which were under their control, and they pit one group against another one so that no one can be strong enough. So they would all look at the empire that which were ruling them. So in many cases, these ruling empires have fanned this majority. They took advantage, exploited the majority-minority situation. So
Yeah.
in many ways, these outsiders have further aggravated accentuated the differences which already existed in those societies. They did
So
not.
technically there were already tensions, and
Yeah.
they kind of seize on that as a method of control.
The clear example is in Afghanistan, my native country. When the Soviet Union came to Afghanistan and invaded Afghanistan in 1979, they came up only with 100,000 and 125,000 troops. So what they did, they recruited in their armies, their supporters, mostly the minorities of Afghanistan, like the Hazaras and others groups. So they were exploiting this already divided country further by recruiting the minorities against the majority. So they left really Afghanistan in ruins.
Wow.
So all these occupying forces have done that. And Americans are not exceptions. Nazi Germany was not an exception either. When Alexander the Great went to Iran and other places, they supported the ones that were against the Achaemenian Persian Empire. So the outside invaders want to succeed with as less casualties of their own. So what they do, they recruit the people who probably support them and that have a resentment against the previous regime or the previous minority. So the minorities have always been exploited by outsiders. Not always, but most of the time, I should say that the outside forces have exploited the divisions. And rather than helping to bring those people together, they pushed them further from each other. So, but
Yeah,
the
and then they also sometimes try to solve tensions by separating these groups. And, I don't know if that is, I don't know what their motive is behind that. But like, for example, they said that India should become two countries, one which was Muslim majority and one which was Hindu majority. And so they drew the lines, the borders of Pakistan, first East Pakistan and West Pakistan, and now East Pakistan is Bangladesh.
Yeah, it's a Bangladesh.
That's just one example because we were talking about India, but they also did the same thing in Greece and Turkey. The British did. I don't know. Mainly the British seem to do that.
Between the British and the Greeks, there's a Cyprus. Cyprus is one of those area of conflict. Between India and Pakistan, Kashmir is an area of the conflict.
It created major conflict.
Between Afghanistan and Pakistan, this Pashtunistan area is a disputed area. So the British left those things very complicated until this date. The Kashmir problem continues. The Cyprus problem continues. Just close to the Palestine. Palestine came under the control of the British. It was
very similar.
And the British, finally, many of them, Israel was created. The partition plan of 1947, which was the United Nations partition plan, was supposed to create two countries, one for the Jews, one, it never materialized. So Israel became, so these disputed areas have remained. It is source of conflict. It will, who knows how long it will continue.
Yeah.
So the Cyprus situation is one of those. The Palestinian dilemma is another one. The Kashmir dilemma is another one. So these are some of those. And drawing boundaries do not solve the problems. Stalin drew many of the boundaries. There's 15 states, which used to be the Soviet Union.
Right.
Those are the artificially drawn boundaries. But as soon as that, the Soviet system collapsed. With that, there's new countries, Ukraine and Belarus and Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. They went back to their own ethnicity and languages and have their own independent countries now. So this empires can continue for a short period of time throughout the history, then they disappear. Yugoslavia is another example that under the force of Marshal Tito, for example, he united Bosnia and Serbia and Croatia. And as soon as this guy died and went, and so it exploded from within. Now it's a Kosovo and Bosnia and Croatia, this and that, Serbia. So sometimes these empires shatter.
Melania Trump is from Slovenia too.
Yeah.
former one of the current countries and former territories of Yugoslavia. I mean, I think I think that the minority problems seem to come out when you draw the borders and you do the invasions. It somehow brings up conflicts for people based on their kind of religious background, but that's a lot of times intertwined with their ethnic background as well. It's hard to extricate those two things many times, especially when you're looking at small areas, like for example in Iraq, aren't Christians usually Asuri, or is that in Iran actually? In Iran, aren't Christians usually either Asuri or Armenian?
Yeah, so Iran, what happened? After when the Orthodox Christians got the upper hand with the Roman Emperor Constantine was converted to Christianity.
Yep.
And they came with one conference and another one, and the ones who did not accept the dogma that which came under Constantine when he was presiding over one of those, he called the bishops, who did not agree with them, had a different views of Jesus and the personality of the Jesus, whether he was a mortal being or he was divine, and those were expelled. And the first group were the Nestorians, for example. Many of them left the area which was under the control of the Roman Empire. They went to Iran, which the Romans never captured Iran. It was another big, huge power there. And some of them went to the subcontinent of India. There's Asuri. By the way, one of my relatives is married to one of the Iranian Asuri girl. She speaks fluent Farsi, beautiful, but she's Asuri, she's a Christian. And her husband is a Shia, what do you call this, 12-er Imami.
Yeah.
So these are Asuris. Then there is another Armenian church, or there are Armenian Iranians, the Armenian Iranians. Iran is a unique country. We look at now, Iran is a very intolerant country under the Ayatollahs. But when you look at the history of Iran was the most, I should say, tolerant empire in the world. It was the Cyrus the Great who let the Jews return back, that whole history. When Jews were expelled by the Babylonians, when the Persians defeated the Babylonians, not only he let the Jews return back to and then rebuild their temple, and he even paid for that. So that's when you look at the Jewish history, they look at Cyrus the Great as one of the saviors of Judaism and Jews. And then came the Zoroastrians. Until this date, the Zoroastrians, it's a very prominent community. I mean, relatively speaking, their numbers are decreasing, but still they're in Iran. And there are this Asuri Christians and Armenian Christians, and many others are still in Iran. Then came the revolution of Iran. Until 1979, these communities were doing very well in Iran, and there was a very prominent Jewish community. Many of them have left after the revolution in Iran because they became, Zoroastrians were the first group that many of them left. Then came this Asuri and Armenian Iranians. When you go to Los Angeles area and San Francisco, hundreds and thousands of Iranians have left after the revolution.
Yeah.
To the United States and other European countries.
So I have a map here of Christianity in the Middle Ages when you're looking at Iran. So let me show it to you. Here we go. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah, I do.
So like this is the Middle Ages. So like here you have Turkey. Can you see my pointer?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you have Turkey up here. That's today's Turkey, but back then Constantine made the Eastern Roman Empire actually a Christian empire. You know, way back when. I think that was in 300 something. And
yeah,
then,
it was
yeah,
313 AD. Yeah.
Yeah. And then soon after that, they started holding councils on all those Christian theological tenets, you know. And like you said, at a certain point, they really disagreed, and the Nestorians they were kicked out. And so the Persians, which are located over here, they accepted the Nestorians. So you can see that there are all these. Well, also in Egypt, so not just Persia, but in Egypt, you have your major, Christian outposts as well, and their own church, which I think are different than Nestorians. But anyway, in the Middle Ages, you had these major, like basically bishops in all of these. Look, Bukhara, Samarkand, Tashkent, and then also Kalyan in India. So you had a major outpost in Sana'a in Yemen. So, you know, it was, like I said, like maybe the total number of people was small, but it's still a significant number. It's still significant in terms of history and how Christianity spread outside of Europe, you know, because there's still some remnants. There's even an outpost in Tibet. So that was an archbishop. Yeah.
And that's one reason. After three major religions, Judaism, the oldest of the monotheistic religions, originated in the Middle East. Christianity, the second oldest. Islam, the third. I'm talking about Abrahamic branches of the monotheistic religions. Christians accepted conversions. Christians accepted proselytization, and in Islam, the same. They started proselytizing and spreading Islam missionaries to other places. Then they converted other people, either by, some of them by force, but many others by Sufi and other. So Judaism did not do that. They did not encourage proselytization. They did not encourage intermarriages.
Big difference, between Judaism and Christianity.
My students are asking me that, Dr. Payind, Judaism is the oldest religion. Why it did not increase? But because they did not have this, you have to be born from a Jewish womb, so to speak,
right?
Like a Jewish mother. So that's
literally, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's literally that cases. So for that reason, their numbers did not increase as much as these other two, which accepted. These Christian missionaries did a tremendous job. I have seen them in India, because that was my first research as a senior at the University of Kabul, was that I did some research on these missionaries in Shillong, which was the capital of Assam. There were all these schools and churches and others. So both Catholics and Protestants, different denominations. So they converted tremendously. They did convert in areas like very hard to reach, like in the mountains of Himalayan ranges, for example. So the Christian missionaries have done a tremendous job of spreading Christianity to those areas, both Catholics and Protestants.
That's fascinating. I wonder why. I mean, that must be especially there must be some like scripture that says you should travel. You know, like I know that you're supposed to convert others, but it seems like Christians really were into the whole, you know, feeling called to travel to other places. I don't know.
Very simplistic. A simplistic analysis would be that
Yeah.
for Christianity, you have to accept Jesus as the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, and then you have to be baptized. That's it. You accept that. And there are some dietary restrictions that if you're a Catholic, you should not eat, for example, on Fridays, steak and that sorts of, there is very little. And Islam is the same. You just say that, well, just declare the Shahada and then accept all the messengers of God and all the books of God, and then Prophet Muhammad as the last messenger of God. That's it. Okay,
Right.
Hallelujah. Alhamdulillah, you're a Muslim now.
It doesn't take very long. Yeah, it's pretty instantaneous.
It's not very difficult. And
Yeah.
they do not. That you
Oh,
have to
we've got a question.
But when it comes to Judaism and many others, it becomes a little bit difficult. The dietary restrictions are difficult. So there are many things that which works. I'm not saying that one religion is better than the other one, but that's one reason why one grows and another one does not grow. So these two religions have tremendously expanded. Where it originated, there are more Muslims outside the Middle East than there are inside the Middle East. There are more Christians outside the Middle East than inside the Middle East.
So I have a question here from Ordinary One. Ordinary One asks, why should there be no oppression over minority community? And I'm not fully understanding the question. Like if he's asking, so where there should be no oppressions over minorities, community gets hallmark status within it. So I think he or she is saying that these communities should be protected so they don't get oppressed, right? In the Middle East. So why would there...
When you look at the texts of the Quran, of the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and others, in the text of the Quran, Jews, Christians, and Sabians are considered to be Ahlul Kitab, people of the book. Their lives have to be protected. Their churches and synagogues have to be protected. You cannot take it by force. There are some stipulations that if a Christian lives in a Muslim society, they're Ahlul Zimma. If they are paying taxes, a little bit higher taxes and that sort of thing, but they cannot serve in the army. This sort of restrictions are there too. They're not the first-class citizen. But they're not. It's not that one Muslim can go and kill a Jew in the street and he can get away with that or steal their property. Their protections are there. Jews and Christians, this is one reason why in many of these Muslim countries, from Egypt to Iran and Turkey and many other, still there are synagogues which are literally centuries old. There are churches which still survived, they're functioning. Jews and Christians were allowed to have their religious affairs controlled by their own, the family affairs, the marriages and inheritance, they were supposed to do that. So, but this was in theory, but in practice, people always did not like the minorities.
What about Zoroastrians? Do they get protection or?
Yes, they were protected too. That's why they're in Iran until this date under the Ayatollahs. There is only one thing that they prevented the Zoroastrians not to do that in Muslim society, which was this dakhmas. When you the dead bodies should
I was wondering.
Yeah, to be eaten by the vultures, and then you later bury the bones. That was somehow prevented. And that was something that even Alexander the Great did not like. When he went to Iran, he did not like this practice.
He saw that, yeah. Or like
dead, yeah. So anyhow, this was something that which, but still in India, again, you brought the India. Most of these Nestorians and others that were persecuted under the Roman Empire later, they went to India and they found in refuge there too. Zoroastrians found refuge in India. Somehow the Indian, either under the Mughal control or later the British control, they accommodated these Zoroastrians who have left Iran, migrated to India and other. They're called Parsis.
Right.
So the Zoroastrians. No, there is the mistreatment of the minorities is a very common practice.
There was just a movie out about Freddie Mercury.
Oppressing the
So
minority.
I don't know if anyone in our audience remembers, like, I think it was last year, there was that movie out about Freddie Mercury. He was the singer of Queen, the really big, like 70s, they had all these 70s and 80s hits, and 90s. And anyway, it was a pretty good movie, but what was interesting is Freddie Mercury was, I think, a Parsi. I mean, he was Zoroastrian, and his dad in the movie said, "Remember, right thoughts, right words, right deeds." And I knew that saying very well because Dr. Payind taught me that. It's mentioned.
It's in Persian. I will just recite it in Persian.
Yeah.
Pindar khub, guftar khub, kirdar khub. Means that you should think good, you should say good things, and you should practice, do things good. So this is the most important three things in Zoroastrianism, which is taught. And some people say that probably Zoroastrianism is the most tolerant religion of any other religion which is even practiced today on the face of earth, because they were the ones that who accepted these Jews that were persecuted by the Assyrians and by the Babylonians and everyone. And this Persian Empire gave them refuge. And they went there, and then from there they returned back and rebuilt their temple, which was destroyed by the Babylonians. And so that's
So like a small number of people, and they're dwindling, but still very important to know about, very important community in world history.
Yes, I think so. The numbers are less than 500,000. That's another one. It's very strict. You have to be born as Zoroastrians. You cannot convert to that.
Okay.
You just accept the dogma, and then you're a Zoroastrian. Just like in Christianity and Islam. You can convert in any age, but it has to be not enforced on you. It should be accepted by the person, and especially adults. Even the proselytization of children are not accepted. I mean, it's immoral considered. Just take a child and then convert them into Islam or Christianity. Let them grow, and then when they are adults, they make their own decision. So these are all in the books. But in practice, all kinds of discriminations have happened.
Yeah.
People have, just like how many Christians are turning their other cheek when they are hit. I mean, that's it's very difficult to do that. The people who committed Inquisition were Christians.
I think it's very exceptional. People do it, but they're considered.
It was a Christian society.
Yeah.
They did not turn their cheeks. And again, how many Muslims, when they conquered almost most of the North Africa and other places, they did not practice Islam the way Islam is preached. They just violated. And some Muslim scholars, including myself, we think that one of the violate Muslims are themselves. Do we think that Taliban are really good Muslims? They're implementing their working Islam. Are Al-Qaeda are good Muslims, representatives of the Muslims? Are Hamas, are this or that? Are the Hezbollah, these terrorist groups? Terrorism has been against, the killing of the innocent person is against almost all religions, Judaism, Christianity. And there are scriptures in the Quran, there are passages that if someone kills an innocent person, it is like killing the whole humanity.
Yeah.
If someone saves an innocent soul, it is like saving the whole humanity. So humanity has been at the core of many of these religions. But the followers are the ones. I don't think the clear example is that just January the 6th, the people who went and stormed the Capitol, broken the windows and looking for pens. And are these true good Americans and Christians doing the Christian things? Was the Christianity tells them to turn your other cheek? So the violators are in all religions.
In their minds, they are. They're doing
God's work.
They feel righteous. Yeah, I think a lot of times these fundamentalist groups feel very righteous, and they kind of define themselves by who they're not. Like that, we're not those. What do you call it? Kafir, or whatever. We're the right kind of Christian, or we're the right kind of Muslim, or we're the right nationality, or whatever it is. Like the righteousness comes from that, and then they feel like they're doing righteous things when they're doing violence, and that's a very important thing.
In my comparative religion courses I have taken, there is nowhere in Christianity is this lynching by the mob visible. I mean, they had this
exactly.
They wanted to capture pens. I mean, hang
Very
pens.
scary. Yeah,
So
they built a gallows. Yeah, very
I,
scary.
I was offended not as a
It's so shocking. It's like I still am not fully. I can't believe it. I have to admit, I still can't quite. It hasn't sunk in like the full extent of what happened.
some of us who have lived in oppressive regimes, like myself. I grew up in oppressive societies. I have seen Taliban in Afghanistan. I have seen the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. I was really, it was just a revival of a nightmare. And we thought that, well, it will never happen in the United States. It will never happen in a Western society, in a Western capital. So it revived some of those nightmares that many of us had. I hope it is quickly changed the situation. And the people who committed that probably will see that it should not be repeated. This nightmare should not be repeated for many of us. And especially one of the things, and one of my nieces wrote to me because she was in Afghanistan and she has seen these bearded people coming, lashing, especially these Taliban girls and women in the streets.
Yeah.
And she said that, well, look, uncle, I'm scared that those Taliban that I saw in Afghanistan with kind of fuzzy beards and hitting women and children in the streets. This is happening here even in the United States. They came as refugees here. So some of us who have lived under those kind of nightmares, not happy with what happened, more than other people probably. Well, everyone is suffering from this lawlessness. But some of us who have lived under oppressive dictatorial regimes, tyranny, and some of us who have done field research in countries which experienced tyranny by the ruling class, so to speak. It's really something that we have to think about this.
It's very sobering. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I could go on, but we are at the end of the hour. I think we're actually past. So we should probably sign off, but I'll stay.
I will just say one or two things at the beginning. So the largest group in the heart of the Middle East today are the Arabs. The second largest group in the Middle East are the Turks and Turkomans. The third largest group of non-Arabs, I'm talking the Arabs are the majority. Then the Turks and the Iranians. Iranians or Turks are two different group of people. Even their languages, one belongs to the Turkic language family, another one to the Indo-European, the Indo-Iranian language. So they are non-Arab Muslim societies. Then when we come to the Jews in the Middle East, which also they were there from the time of, no one knows the Hebrews, for thousands of years. They are also one of the religious groups. They are the minority. Israel has a population of about 8 or 9 million, and only 2 million of them in Israel, under the control of the Israelis, are the Arabs. So the Arabs are the predominant group, especially Arab Muslims. And Sunni Muslims are the majority, and they mistreat the Shiites. Saudi Arabia, for example, is a Sunni majority country, but still has about 17% of the Shiites in Saudi Arabia. And some of those Shiites were hanged and imprisoned and mistreated by the Saudi royal family. So it was not only Adnan Khashoggi, which was somehow slaughtered in Turkey. So Saudi Arabia has also black spots of mistreatment of the minorities.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. I think, well, and all this resonates as well with, struggles of minorities in the United States. That it's a different cultural context, but there are still, for some reason, some groups in the United States don't get the same protections and opportunities as other groups. And you can clearly see how that's divided across racial lines, especially. So,
Black life, if you talk to an African American
yeah,
in the United States, their major complaint is that we are not treated as equal.
yeah,
If you talk to the Hispanic Americans, they think, well, forget about that. Come to the male and female. If you look at the female segment of the society, even though probably female may be the majority in numbers, because women survive more longer than the men.
point, yeah.
Women are the majority in this country, but they are mistreated
Right.
by the minority men.
It's not necessarily even that minorities are literally minorities. Like the problem of minority rights has to do more with who is represented in the society and who isn't. Like who gets protection and who doesn't, who gets special.
Who gets the protection, who has the power.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, when I looked at the treatment of the minorities by the majority, it is just it's abuse of power in many ways. If the minorities are mistreated, any society, any minority, Shiites by the Sunnis are, in Iran, the Sunnis are the minority. Iran has only about 16% of the Sunni, and these Kurdish people are treated very badly in today's Iran under Ayatollahs. And the Sunnis are treated very badly in Iran. So the Shia majority countries are also mistreating the Sunnis, and the Sunni majority countries are, as Saudi Arabia is one of the examples, mistreating Saddam Hussein was mistreating the Shiites and Kurdish people. Saddam Hussein used chemical agents on the Kurdish population, if you remember that in the 1980s.
I remember that. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, he just really bombarded them with the chemical agents.
And that was well before the Gulf War, too. That was
12,000 or 13,000 of this.
That was in like 1989, I think. And the Gulf War wasn't until 1992. So they may have vilified Saddam Hussein in order to justify the first Gulf War, but if they really wanted to vilify him, they should have invaded when he gassed his own people. But I mean, I'm not saying we should have invaded at all, because I don't think we should have. But
yeah, and another one, Egypt has a very large community of the Coptic Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And these Coptic Christian churches are desecrated in many ways, so that their treatment is not very good either. So this minority is a minority, no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, and it also depends on. I mean, some minorities get more advantages. So I guess I think that's an important issue to address. Maybe in another podcast, like some minorities can actually have more advantages, like protected minorities, or there can be an ambivalence there, in terms of their identity. And in some contexts, they have an advantage, and in others not, and things like that. So it's not simply having less numbers. It's more just you're looking at the differences between different groups because of their religion or their history or their culture or their language, whatever it is. There's different cultural communities that you can distinguish between them. And unfortunately, human beings have a hard time grappling with difference. Either they want to see it as a negative thing, or they want to see themselves as better than the other, and rather than just accepting that there's diversity and solving these problems, humans so far have not been too good at dealing with that. So hopefully we can get better. Okay. Anything else we should share? Or let's see if there's any. Oh, here's a question from Mustafa Wardak. What are your thoughts on Ahmadiyya in Saudi Arabia? They are not recognized by Saudi Arabia. So first of all, what is Ahmadiyya?
Ahmadiyya is one of the offshoot of Islam, because in Islam we say that 4 major schools of Sunni and 3 major schools of the Shia, and then each one of them have subgroups. For example, Alawites in Syria, some Shiites would consider them as heretics. So this Ahmadiyya was a branch of, again, it grew in the time of the British control of India. There was a guy by the name of Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. There were other branches too. So just like the Baha'is in Iran, it was one of the Shia offshoot. The Druze is another one. these are the minority small sects here and there. In some cases, the British promoted them to find another one to somehow divide the Muslim community, to divide and conquer. So they're considered to be somehow, because some of these Ahmadiyyas, even though they use the same Quran as the Sunnis and the Shiites do, that's another reason I have to make it clear here. The Shia are using the same Quran, which 114 chapters, and the Sunnis the same. When it comes to the interpretations and who is the last messenger of God, some people claim that, well, this Ghulam Ahmad Qadian was the last messenger of God. Prophet Muhammad was not. So that's sort of thing. It continues. There are some very educated people who follow that tradition and that religion, but it is regarded as not a. The status of them are a little bit like what the status of Mormons are among the Christians.
Right.
So I mean, exactly, it's not the same. I should
Mormons
not
consider themselves Christian.
Yeah, so that's
and
consider themselves Christian. So anyhow, so Islam is not immune to that too, because we're talking about 1.3, 1.4 billion Muslims.
Absolutely.
So all kinds of sects. I mean, in the United States, where the David Koresh, if David Koresh, remember that in Texas?
Oh yeah, Waco.
The Waco, if he would have survived and not burned that sort of thing, probably he would have a cult of personality. There was another guy, Jim Jones. I
don't remember that personally, but I know of that. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim Jones took these people to Guyana or somewhere in Latin America,
yes.
And most of them were cyanide. So there were this personality cults are here and there created.
Yep.
But the wrong thing is that some people would say that no.
People have a strong need to feel like they belong to a community.
So there are these branches, and Ahmadiyya is one of those.
Yeah.
It's not accepted as one of the schools or one of the Muslim Islam's branches. So somehow they're looked upon by many others who are in the majority as a sort of heresy somehow.
Sure.
No.
Yep.
They're not considered apostates.
So in Saudi Arabia, I mean, they would definitely not recognize them because they are very, definite about which version of Islam is correct, and that the others are definitely incorrect. I mean, they're very overt and explicit about that. And they've even created conflicts with other Muslim majority countries because of things they've done that have to do with the pilgrimage sites, because Mecca and Medina are in Saudi Arabia. So at a certain point, there was talk of getting rid of the Prophet's gravestone.
Yeah, that's what the Wahhabis would. That's what they call it, Wahhabis.
They think that that's a sin to have a gravestone, but all the other Muslim majority countries were like, "No way, you're not touching that."
Yeah, it did not happen. Otherwise, there's the Ibn Saud family in this, what they call it, Wahhabis or Salafis or whatever. They wanted to get rid of that because they said it's a heresy, because Prophet Muhammad was not divine, which is true.
Right. And you shouldn't.
In Islam, messengers are not divine.
Yeah.
Abraham and Noah and Isaac and Ishmael and Moses and Jesus and Prophet. So Muslims believe that they are mortal human beings. They're not divine. So that's the thing but the Saudi Arabian Wahhabis idea was that people are praying to the mosque where there is a grave, so they become
right.
They made Prophet Muhammad not as a messenger of God. It's a cult. It's sort of like cult kind of things.
I mean, because there are a lot of grave sites that people go to. I don't want to say they're going to worship, but maybe some are, but they are pilgrimage sites, and so that's seen as a bad thing.
You and I went to the Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi's.
Yeah.
In Konya.
And we also went.
They did not go to think that he was divine, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. He was a mortal being, is under 2 tons of dirt. But they said that he was one of the guys who knew about Quran, and he was this and that. And his poetry is it's very non-denominational in many ways. It's about humanity.
Absolutely.
He was a humanist.
It's very uplifting for a lot of people, even if they're not
they revere him for his for his teachings,
Mhm.
not for considering him as a. So somehow this did not go well with this strict Taliban kind of Muslims, or the Al Qaeda kind of Muslims, or the Wahhabis, or the Salafis kind of. So that's one reason why they're very much against this, some sort of Sufi traditions.
Yes, right. That does put them at odds with Sufi
Yeah.
tradition, big time.
And many of them were very jealous of these Sufi peers, because who in many ways were scholars of Islam. This Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi was not an ordinary person. He was a mufti.
Maybe next time we could focus on Sufi traditions.
Yeah, that would be another good podcast, and I would love to do that.
But I think we should talk more, but we're already at 1 hour and 15 minutes, so I think we should wrap up.
Okay, well, thank you, Melinda, again, and
Urgent.
thank
Okay.
you everyone who is listening to us, or at least would.
Yeah, thank you so much for sticking with us. We really appreciate it, and thanks to everyone who watches this later on as a recording. We really appreciate it, and yeah, just feel free to send us messages on Facebook. That's probably the best way to get in touch with us if you have questions. You can also get in touch with us through the Middle East Studies Center website that I shared. So yeah, and hope to keep growing this audience. I've really enjoyed it. And thanks so much, Dr. Payind, for making time for us. We really appreciate it. I got so much out of this conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Melinda, for facilitating everything. Okay, Melinda, I will just ask you this. Are you making this as when you'll be reporting about this to Gil and Fernando, that these are some of we cannot do this outreach in person. At least we are doing now through podcast and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Just either write to them in some ways that we do that.
Okay. We'll do.
From our homes, from our basements.
Yep. Exactly.
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, there are studios on campus we can use, but right now campus is not the greatest place to try to navigate because there's no one there. So
Okay.
Thanks for joining us from your home. All right.
Okay, bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.